This is Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur with your host, Lynn Freest. Lynn will share ideas and expert advice from people that are walking in your shoes and living their encore careers, where they want and at the pace they want. You'll start a company of one with confidence and knowledge to live a fulfilled life of freedom and ease. Lynn is a coach and leadership consultant whose mission is to show senior leaders and experts how to start something refreshing and new after a full career in the corporate environment.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur. Thanks for listening. This is episode 154, but it's also a replay of episode 133. And it's an interview with Steve Preston, who wrote the book, Creating a Portfolio Career. I'll soon be offering openings in my Encore Career group coaching program. This is a program that will enable you and a peer group to launch and develop your own Encore careers. If you'd like to get off to a powerful start in that, please contact me. So, the book, Portfolio Careers, How to Work for Passion, Pleasure, and Profit by Steve Preston. Again, I think this topic is worth revisiting. It's an interview I did with Steve. So it's an idea that I think we need to keep exploring and keep in front of us because careers are different for everybody, but I think especially for those of us in encore careers. So again, a little bit about Steve, and he'll introduce himself also. He took a redundancy. He's from England, so that's how they view it over there, in 2001. And he made it his defining career and life choice not to let any employer control his future. Sounds like somebody in an encore career. He's now recognized as the career catalyst. So from his perspective, if you want to do what you love while earning multiple income streams, he's got a path to help you and create that portfolio career. And we'll have links to his websites and his courses too. Some of the ideas we talk about with Steve are, what is a blended working lifestyle? He further explains the 3 Ps of passion, pleasure, and profit. Why is there a massive increase in interest in a portfolio career? What's the evolutionary process of creating a portfolio career? And finally, what are the distinguishing factors that you might see or you might need to pay attention to? So, we'll talk to Steve now. Well, welcome, Steve. It's great to have you on the show to share your wisdom with our audience. I think to start with, I'd love you to do your own introduction and what's your journey been and what are the things you're currently working on?
Okay, thank you. And thanks for inviting me as your guest, Lynn. Delighted. Well, quick overview, if you like. I had a very successful management and senior management career in the corporate world, if you like, and that was mainly in the travel industry. But I'd actually arguably left the travel industry per se many years before I moved on, because all of my roles in the latter years in my company were a mixture of sales, operations, project management, senior HR roles, you name it. So sort of a real mix of everything. I only recognised that later on, which I'll probably come back to. But essentially what happened was that my company moved to a different part of the country, and what they did, they merged 5 different head offices from different parts of the company, all under one banner, which made a lot of commercial sense. And they actually said to me, come and live in where this was going to be like a king, because it was much lower cost of living there. And I basically said, thanks, but no thanks. And that was a career-defining moment for me, Lynn, because I decided there and then I don't want an employer to basically take control of my career and life and tell me where to live and even tell me the job they wanted me to do there, because that's not what I wanted to do. So it was a very quick decision. It wasn't right for the family for multiple reasons. So I then took a redundancy, a layoff, and I had this year of finding myself, a voyage of self-discovery, which had many twists and turns. And eventually I ended up on a government-funded course where they were helping unemployed professionals and executives back into the workplace. And through that course, I actually basically discovered career and personal development, because I had no experience really previously. And I fell in love with the type of work that they were doing on the course. And I fed back to the MD of the company running the course and said, great course, but I think you can improve it in a number of ways. And it sort of had a domino effect then, because they took on board what I said, which I was quite surprised about, because they were very old-fashioned in their views. And I was suggesting they took more of a coaching approach rather than a telling approach, because a lot of the executives on the course didn't really take kindly to that. And anyway, one thing led to another, and within a matter of weeks of leaving that course, I'd actually helped them completely redesign that whole course. And then I became a career coach on the course, and then trained others to do likewise. So there was this real incredible domino effect. While that was going on, I'd set up my own business anyway. And then eventually I let go of all that work and did it under my own company. And then people said, Steve, you need a book. You're really good at this stuff. And I'm thinking, well, how do I write a book? And I did a lot of writing. I wrote for a lot of trade journals and websites and so on. And again, short story of a long story. One thing led to another. And I eventually wrote my first book, which was Winning Through Redundancy, which is all about how to win through layoffs and so on. And the feedback was so good, it was internationally acclaimed. People said, well, you need to write a similar book about career change, not just about redundancy, even though that book was primarily about how to survive and win through a layoff, if you like, and come through the other side, possibly changing careers. And then as a result of my passion for portfolio careers, people then said to me, Steve, you need to now write a book on portfolio careers. And that was my last book, Portfolio Careers and How to Work for Passion, Pleasure and Profit. The 3 Ps, as I call them, and I'm sure we'll come back to that. So I had this very strange journey and evolution. I mean, if you'd said to me, it's 20 years ago I set up my business. If you'd said to me 20 plus years ago that I'd be doing what I do now, and I'd have 3 internationally acclaimed books and become a speaker and all the rest of it, and create online courses and become a leading career coach, I would have laughed at you. I said, no, that's never going to happen. So I'd like to think that can give your listeners, your audience, real encouragement about what is possible in your latter years, if you like.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And, I was originally struck by the book title, Portfolio Careers, because whether it be myself transitioning out of a corporate job or my listeners, we're used to thinking of, quote, one job. That's what we do. And so now all of a sudden, this idea of having, hey, let's put together the different things that interest you in life and create a career that way was kind of a marvelous idea. So maybe start with a little bit of your thinking on how you got to the whole idea of a portfolio career.
Well, I'll share with you my amazing light bulb moment then. It was actually when I was on the course I mentioned, and I heard a quote from the late, great Peter Drucker, the management leadership guru. And he basically said that organizations and corporations once built to last like pyramids are more like tents. How can you define your life or build your life around a temporary structure or something along those lines? Every time I say that, the hairs on the back of my neck go up, and it did just then as well. And I thought, oh my goodness, and it was like he had this incredible prophecy, Lynn, because within a matter of months of hearing that quote, we had WorldCon, Enron, and all these unbelievable large and successful corporations all collapsed like a pack of cards. And I thought, well, this guy clearly was onto something. And then I came across the work of Charles Handy in the book of The Age of Unreason. And again, we're going back sort of, many years, 30 plus years ago, I think he wrote that book. And in that book, he talked about what he called the portfolio life. And again, lots of crystal ball type stuff, if you like, crystal ball thinking. And he talked about how work would change and it'd be less structured and people would be working remotely and technology would take over and so on. It was incredible that he could see that all that time before it actually happened. So those two things combined got me thinking, well, hang on a minute. There's clearly more than one way to earn a living. And I do like this idea of a collective of things, and especially focusing on, as my T-shirt say, doing what you love. And, what could be better than doing work that focuses on your skills, your talents, your passions and your strengths and all these different aspects and combining it into a great portfolio of different activities. And some of which, and Charles Handy alluded to this all those years ago, some of which might not actually be paid. They could be on a voluntary basis. That could be a key part of people's portfolio. And also lifestyle focused. And this is where I, over the years, with my thinking about portfolio careers and in the book, I talk about what I call a blended working lifestyle. Because people always bang on about work-life balance, but you tell me, Lynn, who has actually real work-life balance? So it's getting this blend of all the things you want to encompass in your working life. And some of that could be leisure related, and especially for your audience of Silver Surfers, some of those will undoubtedly be wanting to have more leisure pursuits and more maybe personal development type activities in their latter years, as I did myself. So that's how it sort of all came about. And then I started running regular seminars and masterclasses and so on, and I got a real name for being an expert in portfolio careers. So the book was a natural progression, if you like, and the guy who wrote the foreword, Dr. Barry Hobson, he'd also been quite well known in the world of portfolio careers and written a book a number of years ago. And he basically said I was taking portfolio careers into a new era. And I thought that was probably the best compliment that I could get, especially around the 3 Ps aspect of passion, pleasure, and profit.
Right. As you were talking, I was thinking, it was really the Industrial Revolution that kind of put us in the idea of narrow jobs and activities. I've been off and on reading a biography of Benjamin Franklin, and here's a person who pursued a wide variety of activities in his life. So, I think some of us, the Industrial Revolution, which obviously has been going on for quite a while, but gave us this really narrow version of what, quote, a job and a life is. And so I think, like you're saying, it's now unfolding back into maybe what it has been in past years, to be honest.
Possibly, Lynn, but I think the pandemic has had a massive impact. Probably like you've seen lots of media reports about how people have challenged their thinking about their jobs and their careers and their life in general as a result of the pandemic and being stuck at home and having all this time to think. And of course, the traditional one type of job or even one type of self-employed paradigm clearly is broken when you get a pandemic and everything comes crashing down. So I think that's where there'll be a massive increase in interest in portfolio career working and portfolio career development, throughout this year and moving forward, when people think, well, hang on a minute, I don't want to be at risk of all of my income suddenly disappearing because something outside of my control is going to bring it down. So I think this is where also having some sort of online income stream is absolutely essential nowadays as well, as part of a portfolio career.
Yeah, I like to think of the pandemic as, I always believe that much of our lives are built on habit. Whatever the habits or the structures or the processes we're used to, and that has a certain momentum to it. And yet the pandemic kind of unfroze all that. And so it has really allowed people like myself or yourself or others to say, oh, well, maybe there's other things possible here. I can adopt a new way of working, a new way of living. So
yes, and particularly the lifestyle focus, Lynn. I think so many people suddenly thought, well, hang on a minute, there's more to life than work. And that's really helped challenge their thinking in particular, and the flexibility angle and so on.
Turning back to your book, one of the things I really enjoy about your book and others is the rich stories that you provide of people who have actually done this, because that's very informative to me to hear about people who have done this and hear about such the variety of ways that you described in your book.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, when I wrote the book, one of my aims was to make it educational in many respects. So obviously you got a bit of my story there, but also to get a good cross-section of mixture of my clients who'd gone down the portfolio route and other contacts of mine around the globe who'd done likewise. And it was a massive task, to be honest, because I actually interviewed from memory well over 20 people, and a colleague of mine at the time was also going to co-write it with me, and they'd interviewed probably a similar amount of people. And I had all of the written transcripts from those recordings, and I'm thinking, how on earth do I actually turn this into a book? And my best friend, Don, who unfortunately passed away a number of years ago, he very kindly offered to help me with that process to decide which ones were the best to keep. And so the book is very much in his memory, but it took me a long time to work through those because I wanted to have not just the good stuff. I think it's really important for people who consider going down the portfolio route to actually know warts and all. They need to know what are the big obstacles, what are the roadblocks that a lot of people went through, and how did they overcome them. So I was keen to get that breadth. I like to think I managed to achieve that, and also get lots of different type of case studies. I mean, I still can't get my head around the guy who's got 8 different companies. Why would you want to do that? But he thrives on it.
Yeah. And I think that's especially valuable, at least it was in my listening. And I think my audience is that, one, we're very used to probably having corporate success. And so to this idea that now, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm not going to be great at something. I'm going to be bad at it to begin with. I think, letting people know that, yeah, that's okay. That's going to happen. So the fact that you had great success in the past, there are some bumps in the road, but you can still have great success in the future.
Absolutely. And it's an evolutionary process. What you start out to achieve, I guarantee anyone who goes down the portfolio career route, they might start with the idea, well, my main focus is going to be on X. But then, if you believe in the saying that people buy people, if they like what you do, but they like a specific aspect of what you do, then they will gravitate to you for that particular activity. And it's not always what you expect. But certainly in my case, things evolved, and I very much started to focus on my true passions, what I really love doing. And I cast out other stuff that I no longer wanted to do. And then once you start to do that and people, see you as an expert in your field, as a career coach, maybe for somebody who can help with portfolio career development or changing careers in general, then people will gravitate automatically to that. And so I let other stuff go. But that probably comes back to something which I don't actually mention in the books, I don't think, until right near the end, in terms of things that are the key learning points and things that make a difference in having a successful portfolio career. And one of them, most certainly, is what I call the anchor, having an anchor. And I'll just explain that quickly, Lynn, because it is very important. And that's one of the things that puts a lot of people off having a portfolio career, I think. They think, well, how do I make this work? How am I going to make a living out of this? But if you find one thing, and one thing that can pretty much guarantee you regular work and regular income that will cover most of your outgoings, your outgoing costs, then that gives you the ability and the confidence and the self-belief to develop other strands alongside that. And so finding your anchor is very important for a lot of people. It's not absolutely essential. I mean, I know many people have got portfolio careers where their income is fairly equally divided between a number of different strands of activities. But for most people, especially when they start out, finding one thing that will generate enough income to then give them the momentum and arguably the motivation to make it work is what's going to make the difference.
Well, I think in your book somewhere there was a quote, and I don't remember exactly, but it was kind of learn how to downsize your work and upsize your life, I believe. And I thought that was a marvelous way to look at it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, that's interesting because that actually came from a blog I wrote many years ago. And I was trying to get across the concept of, back to your point, Lynn, that there's more than one way to earn a living. And, for a lot of people, especially when they get into the twilight years of their career, they don't necessarily want all the stresses and strains and responsibility that they might have had in a good professional executive career. So, yeah, it's a way of sort of flipping that, like you say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So downsizing your career and upsizing your life.
Yeah. And what I tell my audience usually is, work when you want, where you want, and only do the work you love. So just in line with what you've said in your book.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Another unique thing with your book and the portfolio careers you described, I'd often heard of people saying have multiple streams of income in your work, so maybe speaking and writing and teaching courses. But yours was the first one where it said, actually, well, you can generate income from gardening and from blogging and from, it was actually different topics. I thought that was very interesting.
Do you mean unrelated topics?
Well, they're just very different as opposed to I'm on one topic, but yes, I'll do a variety of things around that topic. But you actually are saying, hey, there may be multiple topics you're interested in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, back to my lifelong best friend, Don, who's a case study, the first case study in the book. He's a prime example where he was doing gardening, training, career coaching, and magic. And to this day, I think it's a massive shame that he never really used his great talents in the magic field in the best way possible. It was only in his latter years that he started to do it professionally, and he gave a lot of people a lot of fun and joy from what he did. But I always felt that he could have used his skills in magic to work at conferences and exhibitions and things like that, because I've seen people who do that. And obviously you can earn good money from that. But again, back to the blended working lifestyle, his objective with the magic was to do something he loved and to bring that as part of his blended working lifestyle. It wasn't about the money. It was about the enjoyment that he got from it and seeing other people enjoying what he did. And you may recall the particular aspect I mentioned where in one day, on one glorious summer's day, he did gardening in the morning. He ran a career development workshop for me in the afternoon. And then he did magic at a local group in the evening. And I remember it as if it were yesterday. He was absolutely buzzing the following day. He just got such a high on the energy of doing all these different things that he loved, being able to make a difference, arguably. So, yeah. I don't know if you've heard of a lady called Chris King, Lynn.
I have not.
She was a great champion of the portfolio career lifestyle in the US. I'm not sure if she's still with us anymore, but in terms of what you were saying about completely different things, I always found her story fascinating. And I think I allude to her briefly in the book, but she was doing things like web design, speaking and storytelling. She was a great storyteller. She was also a writer. She was a trainer. But the best one of all was that she was a fitness instructor. And I remember having an online call with her a number of years ago, probably about the time I was writing the book. And I said, I'm intrigued about this fitness instructor because she was, I think she was already about 80 then, and she was still doing all this different stuff. And I said, well, what's your sort of client group for your fitness? And she said, well, they're all oldies. And I said, what do you mean they're all oldies? She said, well, they're probably, in their 50s and 60s and so on. And she was a good 20 years older than the rest of them, being their fitness instructor. And I thought, well, that is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, often I have a mother who's 95 and she'll say, well, I worry about these younger people that aren't keeping up, or whatever.
But also it was inspirational to me, the fact that somebody who was about 80 was still involved in all of these different activities. And she didn't stop because, again, doing what she loved.
Absolutely.
It wasn't about the money.
Well, and I think too is, again, from corporate worlds, we think of money as the scorecard, but, I also think that I've seen people, myself included, we pursue volunteer activities, and yet actually down the road, they can turn into income opportunities. You can have a rich conversation. Like you say, people buy people. So you show your value in some, volunteer activity. It could lead to somebody hiring you for something.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I've seen many examples of that over the years, Lynn. And, some people say, well, I just want to keep it on a voluntary basis. But equally, other people, it becomes a part of their paid for portfolio career. A great example of that, I always remember I was doing some career transition support work a number of years ago for people who had been laid off. And there was this guy who was, off the top of my head, he was a IT training manager and apparently very good at what he did. But when I was sort of talking to him about it, he didn't sound particularly excited about it. And I said, well, maybe it's time to completely rethink about what you want to do. What are you really passionate about? What do you enjoy doing most? And what do you maybe do outside of the workplace? And he worked for a mental health charity. And when he started talking about it, he got very animated and so on. And I said, well, what do you actually do? And he explained he was doing some sort of mentoring type role there. And I said, well, that's fantastic. But have you thought about maybe turning that into an income stream? Because you're clearly very good at it and you're in demand. And he just hadn't got that mindset. His mindset was totally closed. He thought, that's what I do in my spare time as voluntary work, and never the twain shall meet. But having got that thought into his head, he then pursued different opportunities of paid work with mental health charities. And I thought, well, good for you, alongside other stuff he was doing as well.
Sure. And I like your concept there of, and I know you mentioned in the book of reframing. Again, that's one of the things that I think is important for people like myself or my audience, that our mindset is really the biggest step. But that whole idea of reframing things that we've been used to thinking about is very important.
Yeah, it's back to, and in the book, as you're probably aware, Lynn, there's a section on conditioning. And unfortunately, whether we like it or not, as human beings, we're all conditioned by what's happened to us, in our upbringing, in our past, and so on. And so, it's very easy to have that tunnel vision. But yeah, reframing it is a key aspect of starting to think differently. And then you can start to see new possibilities. And unless you learn the art of reframing, then you can get stuck in this same old mold, can't you?
Yeah. I encourage people that I work with that think back about the things that you enjoyed or really were excited about in your career, but don't think in terms of positions or titles. What was the actual activity? Because again, we sometimes think, well, I was director of IT or whatever. You're engaged because you got to work with new people, or you were, think about those really detailed activities that you enjoyed and start from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is back to people who define themselves by their job title. And I'm sure you experience this all the time, Lynn. I'm a financial controller, or I'm a HR director, or I'm this. You're not. You're a human being. And again, I think this is where, and I know I cover this in the book as well, Lynn, understanding and fleshing out your values, your career and life values is so important, because people rarely do that. And once they understand all their key drivers, key motivators, pretty much what gets them out of bed in the morning, as I call it, then it's a lot easier to start to piece things together and create a portfolio career of your choice.
Yep, absolutely. But that whole idea of looking at the world differently, it makes all the difference for people, especially when you've had long careers in corporate life that, like you say, the habits are strong, the routines are strong, and you just need to step back and take a second look at it. So,
Yeah.
Well, what other things are you working on now? You've got several books out. What's the thing that excites you right now?
Well, I'm actually slowing down, Lynn. I'm coming up to 67. I've still got an appetite to do what I love. But that again, that's evolving again. As I share on my LinkedIn profile, I've got two hats. I've got my company, which was very much focused on career transition and supporting people through layoffs, things like that, and general career and personal development. And then I got my personal brand hat, if you like, as Steve Preston, the career catalyst, which is probably how you found me for this. I'm actually looking to downsize the company bit and put that on hold. Maybe, it might disappear altogether, to focus primarily on my personal brand in terms of my books, my online courses, and also as a broadcaster, because I don't have a podcast, but I do regular live streams on LinkedIn, and I'm looking to do more of that and then hook people into my online courses. So again, it's lifestyle focused, because our kids are, we're in the UK, but our daughter's in Pasadena in California. Our son is very soon going back to Vancouver. He's got his visa renewed. So being able to travel regularly to see them, and also while we're visiting them, to have various road trips and travel adventures, because my wife and I, travel is in our blood from travel industry days from years back. That's really important to us. So what I don't want, and I'm sure you probably have a lot of people in your audience thinking very similarly, I don't want to be constrained to think that I must be around for different aspects of work. If my business evolves into online courses primarily, and people buy my books and other products, and I can organize live streams to fit around everything else, then that's absolutely fantastic. So that's the way things are moving, Lynn. I do have two other books on the back burner, which I started writing a number of years ago. There is a sequel to the Portfolio Careers book, but these might be possibly retirement projects.
Okay. Well, as my wife has told me, I didn't retire. I just kind of repurposed myself. So that's you just kind of find different things.
Yes, exactly. I've got a lot of friends similar age who've completely retired. They stopped working, and some of them found it incredibly difficult to adjust. They just don't have a focus or a purpose. And I don't see myself stop working as such, for quite some time. Whereas, interestingly, when I was in the corporate world, I'd set up everything to retire at 55.
Well, I often tell the story of my mother, who's 95, had a friend who was even older, but that friend had a project every year. And in the last year of her late 90s life, her project was to learn Italian. But she said I was always going to work on something every year, no matter what.
I think that's brilliant. I think that's the way to go. Definitely.
Well, I sure thank you, Steve. I appreciate your sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us. It's been a great conversation, and I know my audience will appreciate it. And we will include your contact information in the show notes.
Thank you.
As well as the book information. So any final thoughts you have for the audience?
Well, I think, Lynn, for people, silver surfers or whatever, however you want, I know that's how you describe your audience. I think for everybody in the latter years of their career, it's important to realise that you can change, and what better way to earn a living from doing what you love and your interests, your talents, your passions, and doing it in a way that works best for you, so that you're taking back control and what I call becoming the architect of your own future. And, what could be better than that?
Absolutely. Well, again, thanks, Steve, and appreciate our time together, and look forward to maybe connecting in the future.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, Lynn. It's been great.
Again, many thanks to Steve for sharing his journey and helping us understand how he provides help to create other people's portfolio careers. Some of the topics that we covered were: what's a blended working lifestyle? The 3 Ps of passion, pleasure, and profit, the evolutionary process of a portfolio career, and what are some of the distinguishing factors. As I mentioned earlier, in the show notes, we're going to show links to the book, Steve Preston's main website, his email, and a course that he's provided online. Remember, with an Encore career, the rewards are great. You can work when you want, where you want, and you can do the work you love. So, to help you get off to a powerful start, please contact me. You now have the time, attention, and money to make this leap. Again, let me help you do it. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.